You know, every single second of every day, your body is talking to you. It's sending out all these signals about what's going on inside. But the question is, do you know how to listen? Well, today, we're going to decode the language of your health by diving deep into your vital signs, those fundamental numbers that tell your body's amazing, ongoing story.
Come on, you've been there, right? You're at the doctor's office, the nurse wraps that cuff around your arm, it gets super tight, they clip that little red light thing on your finger, and just start jotting down numbers. Ever stop and think, what are they actually looking for? Well, it turns out those numbers are telling a pretty fascinating story.
Here's the best way to think about it. Your vital signs are basically the dashboard for your body. Seriously, just like in a car, these gauges give you a quick, real-time snapshot of how everything's running under the hood. They help you spot potential problems way before they become serious.
So, here's our game plan. We're going to take a tour of this body dashboard. We'll start with a quick overview, then we'll dive into the heart's rhythm, check on the body's thermostat, look at the breath of life, and finally, we'll tackle the one everyone talks about, blood pressure.
Okay, first things first, let's get a look at the whole dashboard. These are the 5 key indicators that give us that instant, at-a-glance health check.
And here they are. You've got your pulse rate, body temperature, respiratory rate, oxygen saturation, and of course, blood pressure. Now, each one tells its own little story, but the real magic? That happens when you see how they all connect and work together. So let's start with the first one.
All right, section 2. We're talking about the heart's rhythm. We're starting with the literal beat of life itself, your pulse.
So what even is a pulse rate? It's actually beautifully simple. It's just the number of times your heart beats in a single minute. That's it. It gives us a direct window into how hard your heart is working at any given moment.
And the spot we all know, the most common place to check it, is right here on the wrist. That's the radial artery. And the reason we use it so much is because the artery is really close to the surface, which makes feeling that beat super easy.
So, what's a good number? What are we looking for? Well, for most adults who are just resting, that sweet spot is somewhere between 60 and 100 beats per minute. That tells us the heart is pumping nice and efficiently. It's not working too hard, but it's not slacking off either.
But what if you're outside that range? Well, if your resting heart rate is over 100, that's called tachycardia. A good way to remember it is T for turbo. And if it's below 60, that's known as bradycardia. Think B for hitting the brakes. And you know, the wrist is really just the beginning. You can actually find a pulse at multiple points all over your body, from the big carotid artery in your neck all the way down to the pedal pulse in your foot. Each one of these spots gives doctors a direct line into your circulatory system. Pretty cool, huh?
All right, we've gone from the rhythm of the heart to the body's own internal climate control, its temperature. So what's the big deal about a single degree anyway?
We usually think of a fever as something bad, right? Something we have to get rid of immediately. But it's actually so much more than that. A fever is your body's defense system kicking into high gear. Your immune system is literally turning up the heat to make it a really uncomfortable, hostile place for invaders like bacteria and viruses. It's your body fighting back.
And here's something interesting. Where you take your temperature actually matters. A normal temperature in your mouth can be a little different from one you take under your arm or in your ear. And that's exactly why doctors always want to know which method you used. So we've covered the beat and the heat. Now let's talk about the fuel of life, our breath, and the absolutely crucial oxygen it delivers. This section is all about respiration and oxygen.
You have to think of this as a 2-part story. On one side, you have the respiratory rate. That's simply how many breaths you take per minute, usually between 12 and 20 for an adult. But on the other side, you have the result of all that breathing. See, it's not just about how often you breathe. It's about how effective that breathing is.
Remember that little finger clip? That's a pulse oximeter. And what it's measuring is your oxygen saturation, or SpO2 for short. Here's a really easy way to picture it. Think of your red blood cells as a fleet of tiny delivery trucks for oxygen. SpO2 tells you the percentage of those trucks that are fully loaded and ready to deliver that fuel to the rest of your body.
And here it is, the magic number everyone's looking for. For a healthy person, you want to see that oxygen saturation level above 95%. That number tells us that your lungs are doing an awesome job of loading up those delivery trucks and keeping your whole body fueled up and happy.
And that brings us to our last vital sign. And you know, it's probably the one that causes the most confusion. So let's break down blood pressure and finally demystify those 2 numbers you always hear at the doctor's office.
Okay, here's the key to finally understanding blood pressure. The top number, that's your systolic pressure. It's the pressure when your heart is actively working, contracting and pushing blood out. The bottom number is diastolic. That's the pressure when your heart is at rest in between beats. So just think of it this way: action versus relaxation. It's that simple.
So how do they get those numbers? Well, that cuff inflates to briefly stop the blood flow in your arm. Then, as it slowly deflates, the doctor listens with a stethoscope. The exact moment they hear the blood start to flow again, that's your systolic, the top number. And the moment that sound disappears completely, that's your diastolic, the bottom number.
So, what do these numbers actually mean for you? This chart breaks down the official categories. A reading around 120/80 is generally considered normal. But as those numbers start to climb, you can move into categories like high normal or even different grades of hypertension, which is just the medical term for high blood pressure. And that's why keeping an eye on it is just so important. So from your pulse to your pressure, from your temperature to your breath, remember, these aren't just numbers on a chart. They're telling the continuous, real-time story of your health. Now that you understand the language a little better, the real question is, what is your body telling you?